Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. I have a suggestion for the liberals in the media who wish to spin for Prime Minister Mark Carney and the liberal government. Sometimes you just have to take the L. Mark Carney's recent visit to the Oval Office to meet with US President Donald Trump was objectively embarrassing. We already had an Oval Office meeting back in June, and we did an okay job back then because Carney kept it light. It sounded like he was going to be willing to engage in negotiations to get a trade deal, and then he went very quickly back into elbows up mode, tried to pass a digital services tax. The Trump administration pressured him out of it. They put counter tariffs on USMCA compliant goods coming into Canada from the US, and they had to ratchet that back because we looked really stupid when the US wasn't even doing that to us. And now we are back in the Oval Office recently, basically just to try and get back to the table, in which we're having to make more concessions, like saying we will invest another $1 trillion into the US economy over some period of time, and we will also commit to new defense commitments that the US wants us to do. And some of those things, like higher defense spending, isn't even necessarily bad. But from a rhetorical standpoint, from negotiating from a place of strength, this has all been bad. It's just objectively bad. We should have been here. We should have been trying to get a deal months ago. But we were too busy futzing around, doing nothing, talking tough, and actually not actually putting anything on the table to put on as a concession or making any threats. And now we're in the position where we're simply having to basically give stuff up just to talk. And we still have people in the mainstream media, oftentimes liberal commentators, it's kind of their job to give a liberal perspective on these things, but trying to spin so hard to the point it's just self defeating. Here was Greg McEachern on Power and Politics trying to put some shine onto this meeting and honestly just doing a terrible job. I think even if you're a liberal watching this, you feel like, hey, come on, really tell me your actual opinion. Stop giving me spin.
Greg, I'll start with you. How do you think the Prime Minister did this week in Washington? He was quite complimentary of the president at some points during that Oval Office sit down, but there's still no deal. What did you take away from that trip?
Well, it really depends on the lens that you looked at it through. I mean, if you're Pierre Poilievre, it was probably a colossal failure. I haven't bothered to check, but I'm probably assuming that I'm correct there. If you compare it, though, to the previous visit, it was excellent.
If you compare it to the previous visit, before we had been embarrassed, just a good sit down chat. They looked like they got along. That one was not good, apparently. And this one, relative to it, was excellent. Oh, but you'd only think this was really bad and a disaster if you were that horrible, mean, horrible guy, Pierre Poilievre. It's such a stupid way of framing this. Basically, Greg McEachern is trying to signal to people out there that, hey, if you think that that was a bad meeting, if it was embarrassing seeing Mark Carney go back on all of his elbows up rhetoric and trying to be praising of Donald Trump and trying to be super nice and very submissive, even though in a certain sense I actually agree that, hey, Trump, let him be a big personality, try and get along with him, trade some jokes with him. You should be doing that. But based on how he ran the last election campaign to his own base, this should seem embarrassing. But no, Greg McEachern's here to tell you, if you're a liberal, hey, don't find this embarrassing, or I'm going to basically say that you must be agreeing with Pierre Poilievre. You must be like Pierre Poilievre if you thought that objectively embarrassing meeting was embarrassing. It wasn't objectively embarrassing. There's nothing that Greg McEachern can say that's going to somehow shed some new light on it. Oh, I didn't think of it that way. I didn't realize that Carney falling in on his face in a puddle of mud was actually a good move here.
Compare it to some of the other world leaders who have gone to the Oval Office. It was excellent. But there was a moment, I think Anne McGrath was on a panel earlier this week, and she used the cringe word. And if I'm looking at it, from the point of view of a proud Canadian or as a supporter of the Liberal Party, there is a cringe factor there as well.
So I thought it was an excellent meeting, Greg. I thought it was an excellent meeting. I don't usually call excellent meetings cringeworthy. So it's like he's having to first hit you with the, well, don't think it's a disaster, because that would be Poilievre-like. It was an excellent meeting. Hey, because Greg knows that internally that's not true, and it was really weird. There's just the way that Carney was acting and how just passive he was. It was cringeworthy. Okay, it was a little bit, but remember, it was still an excellent meeting. There was a cringy element to it, so I'm agreeing with you, the feelings I know you have. But at the end of the day, don't worry. Somehow mission accomplished. Roll out the banner because something happened and it was somehow good for Carney. I don't know what. We had to make a bunch of commitments to get nothing. We still don't have a deal, but it was somehow excellent.
But I'm also mindful that at some point, whether it's true or not, the fact that Trudeau got under the president's skin was used against him by, the opposition parties. So, it's a tough it's a tough audience to negotiate.
It was a used against Trudeau that he got under Trump's skin, or it's just a stupid move when you're Canada and they're America, and we obviously don't have as much trade negotiating muscle. And Carney has completely gotten rid of all of our muscle for negotiating because we've had to walk back so many of the moves we've made. We look like a very unsure opponent in this negotiation, and we've proven ourselves to be weak and willing to roll back any retaliatory moves we make. In fact, I always thought from the beginning we just need to come to a win-win scenario. We don't have to have any tariffs and counter tariffs. We just need to hit them early with what our offer was, make a concession, make a threat, both at the same time, maybe, saying, hey, we are willing to get rid of supply management if you'll go down to zero tariffs, but if you don't, we will have to do this. That's an actual negotiation. Based on all of the intel I've gotten from people who are aware of it, it sounded like Canada was unwilling to basically put anything on the table because Carney wouldn't let them. So LeBlanc had to walk into the room, Dominic LeBlanc, basically just saying like what I've been basically saying as a satirical version of it. Hey guys, we're like PB and J. Why can't we just get along? Why don't you just lower the tariffs for free for nothing? And they just say no. And we've been tariffing them for decades with the supply management stuff, not letting in dairy and poultry and other products into Canada without a tariff. And now we're acting like it's unfair, which is ticking them off. Even if I don't like their tariffs on us, we have to be realistic if we want to get to a real deal. But then you have people like Greg McEachern here who aren't willing to look at this realistically. And he's basically just trying to satiate the feelings of liberal supporters who know it was a bad meeting, but they just want to be told it was good anyways.
Broadly, but the big one in the Oval Office is a really tough one. I will say this though, JP, one of the big problems though is one of the lenses that you have to look at this through is the spin that came out last week. So Mel and Fred and I were about to go on air when there was some word that there was going to be a deal on steel. And I think the folks at the center need to take a look at whether or not they helped that trip and the view of that trip by raising expectations unnecessarily. I think overall, in terms of, take the cringe factor away, it was a good meeting and things continue to move forward.
Yeah, if you take all the crappy parts away, if you take the crap out of the crap sandwich, the sandwich is less crappy. It's like, well, wow, what a concept, Greg. If we just ignore the bad parts, it was quite good. No, it wasn't. We didn't get anything. I don't even know what we got.
Forward, and things didn't blow up as we've seen that have happened with other leaders. But you have to be very careful when your own people are setting expectations. There's a lot of value attributed to that. There's a lot of expectations that you are giving us, and something went awry there.
Okay, so guys, I'm focusing so much on this Greg McEachern guy in the video today because I love how inconsistent this is. Oh, if you thought it was a disaster, you're probably Pierre Poilievre because of course he thinks that. He sets the table with that, poisons the well against anyone who saw that meeting as objectively bad. Oh, you're just some Pierre Poilievre partisan if you think it was bad. It was excellent. Well, it was cringeworthy, but it was excellent compared to other meetings. Well, yeah, they did set expectations too high. Yeah, overall, you can't overpromise and underdeliver in meetings. What was the last thing he just said there? I think this is the last one.
Value attributed to that. There's a lot of expectations, that you are giving us, and something went awry there.
Okay, so we go through Paul. If you think it was a disaster, you're some Pierre Poilievre partisan. It was excellent. Yeah, it was cringeworthy, but it was still excellent compared to other world leaders. well, yeah, they did set expectations too high and things went awry. But remember, that meeting was excellent. Like, whoa, just spin less, talk less, and you'll do Mark Carney more favors. But now I want to jump over to another clip that was on CTV News recently where they're going over the polls. And I like whenever they have to highlight things that frankly don't matter when it comes to the polling. The polling is objectively not going very well for Mark Carney. The Nanos numbers were the last poll that were giving them a significant lead. Now they're within the margin of error in the latest Nanos poll. 39.1 liberal to 37.9 conservative with 11.5 for the NDP. Are the liberals still nationally ahead? Sure. On seat projections, conservatives actually win. And the thing is that, yeah, of course, Mark Carney still has a positive approval rating. He's too boring to be hated. But they're using this as like the silver lining. Well, Carney is still more liked than Polyev. Okay, well, more people would elect conservatives in their local riding. So what's your point?
Solid support for the Liberals and Conservatives. Nano says the two parties are at a statistical dead heat. The Conservatives are making considerable gains, jumping 5 points recently.
Rewind back to before, and that 33% optimism was only about, I think, 7 or 8% optimism. And this speaks to the fact that Justin Trudeau was a negative lightning rod for the Liberal Party, and Canadians writ large were just not optimistic. They were not satisfied with the Trudeau government. Many Canadians back then were either pessimistic or angry.
Solid support for the Liberals.
I love how they have Nick Nanos on, who, and again, I don't think he doesn't rig his numbers in any way. I sometimes don't like the methodology they use at times, but you can still track their polls over time, and at least if they have the consistent methodology, you'll get the feeling of momentum, whether it's going in this direction or that direction. And still, CTV News and Nick Nanos are still basically having to say, well, it's better than Trudeau was in 2023. Better than Trudeau in 2023. What kind of baseline are we using here? The thing about Mark Carney's current position is that it's so early. It's so early for having Mark Carney falling off this hard. He should be massively ahead in the national polls in the party side. And then, of course, you're going to have a positive approval rating. You're a new prime minister that not enough people really know well enough to hate you. Even when Trudeau's Liberals started falling behind in 2018 and 2019 behind the Conservatives in many of the polls, Trudeau still generally had a positive approval rating because it was his first term and people are willing to think nice things of you on a personal level in your first term until they feel like you're personally malicious. Canadians are going to be nice and say, oh, he's probably an okay guy. Are you going to vote for his party? No, but he's probably a nice guy. And the media is still pushing the idea, well, and you even have this in the little post that CBC Watcher, who's a great account on X, put up. And it says, Carney has, I love that what he says here. Liberals ran away from Trudeau, but just couldn't run the disaster caused by Trudeau's policies. Quote, Nano says the two parties are in a statistical dead heat, unquote. Quote, this speaks to the fact that Justin Trudeau is a negative lightning rod for the Liberal Party. And then he goes on to say, Carney was the rap over the liberal jalopy with the promise of stellar negotiating skills that have been demonstrated, demonstrably proven. Something about this is kind of worded weird. Skills that have demonstrated prove those promises illusory as the cheap rap it's melted over. There's something weird there. Okay, I did get his point there though. That like the idea that they're still talking about now, they're almost trying to invoke Trudeau's name to try and put some shine on Carney here. Like he's not as bad. Okay, no doubt in the future I'm going to bring up more liberals trying to talk good, trying to pretend what Carney's been doing on trade has been good. It hasn't been. And the more they have to reach, the more they're just proving that Carney's performance so far has been fairly dull. But anyways, that should be it for this video, guys. If you live in the city of Calgary, one, make sure you vote for Sonia Sharp and get a lawn sign for her. But also, I'm going to be releasing my Alberta municipal selections or my endorsements in the next couple of days here. We're past early voting. Early voting in Calgary is pretty sluggish. so far, which is great because I do feel like a lot of people are fired up for voting for Sonia, but not the other candidates. But I'm going to be doing a list of people I endorse from mayor, councilors, school board trustees, and then I'll probably throw in some mayors for other cities and towns. So in like Medicine Hat, I endorse Drew Barnes. In Edmonton, I guess I endorsed Raheem Jaffer. Um, Tim Cartmell is closer to Andrew Knack, but that's a race where 50% of people are undecided and everything is shifting around a lot. I think that the problem is everyone's going to be stuck with Andrew Knack in Edmonton. And then I'll try and endorse some people in other towns. You'll just have to scroll down to see if I got to your town. Probably not. There are a lot of municipalities in this province, and I do not have the time of day to pay attention to them all. Maybe next time I do something like this, maybe even in another province, I'd love for people to send me recommendations and evidence that this person can actually win and that they're actually conservative. And I'll try and make selections based on that. But, anyways, with that all being said, thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share my content, leave a comment, do all that great stuff. And I will see you guys all later.